You're a designer. You can make things. I don't think you understand how valuable that is. You take it for granted because you're used to seeing it. You think that anybody can just create something out of nothing, but that is an incredible skill to have. All right, everybody. So in this video, we're going to talk about industrial design job hunt strategies. Now, this can be applied to any kind of design, but I'm doing this specific to product design and industrial design. And we're going to basically cover some of the strategies that you can use as well as mindset. So what is sort of the attitude that you need to have when you're applying for these jobs? I've also talked with Brad Harper, who is an industrial design recruiter. He's really good. You should check out his podcast, Design Truth. I'll link that in the description, but definitely check him out. He's got some amazing interviews with some really, really talented designers. I think it's a great resource. So just so you guys have a little bit of background, I've worked for some pretty big clients like Amazon, Motorola, Qualcomm, Logitech, Kohler, a whole bunch of little startups that I helped make very successful. And I'm just telling you guys this, not because I think it makes me like so cool and awesome and amazing or anything like that. I could care less about this stuff. Not that I'm not grateful for those opportunities, but I don't put my sort of emotional identity into it or anything. The only reason I'm telling you is that, I have some credibility. I know what I'm talking about at least a little bit when it comes to this stuff. So I'm hoping that I can help you out so you don't make the same mistakes that I do. So the first thing that I want to talk about is mindset. Like, what is the attitude that you need to have in order to get a job? And I think one of the most important things to remember is that you are a designer no matter what. Your degree as an industrial designer is incredibly valuable, whether you end up doing industrial design or not. You are taught a set of tools that can be applied to so many things, so many aspects of divergent thinking, which is just so incredibly valuable to any company, okay? So you cannot get discouraged when, you don't get the job that you exactly want or it's taking you a long time, especially if it's in the midst of a recession. You can't take this stuff personally. And it's gonna be tough, okay? I wanna make that really clear, especially if it's one of your first jobs that you're getting out of school. It's gonna be tough. So one thing that really helps me is to figure out why I'm doing this. So why do I wanna be an industrial designer so badly? So I'll tell you guys a little story. When I was 3 years old, this is actually one of the earliest memories that I have. When I was 3 years old, I remember my brother, who was much older than me, he was 11. He was building this little toy sailboat out of driftwood. And he carved it out and he made a mast for it and he put a bunch of crazy stuff all over it and it looked really cool. And I remember I was really, really just excited by it. And I think the fact that he created it was so inspiring to me that, I wanted to be a part of that. So what I did was, in my little puny 3-year-old mind, was I took a bunch of action figures and Elmer's glue and attached them all over the boat that he had made. And it pretty much completely ruined the design, but I was super excited about it. And he was pissed off, but I think that sort of points to a larger, maybe even genetic inclination to want to create. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to be an industrial designer, but industrial designers do make a lot of physical things quite often. So I think that the why for me, the reason for my urge to create as an industrial designer is that it's just something that is ingrained in my psyche somehow. Now, I think this is important because it shows me that this is something that I feel like I was meant to do, whether that is to be an industrial designer or not. I am meant to make things with my hands preferably. So that is my why. And you need to figure out what your why is. What is your reason for doing this? Because you're going to be facing a lot of rejection, and the best way to sort of get over that is to remember why you're doing this stuff in the first place. So in regards to not taking rejection personally, this is what I mean. A lot of times hiring decisions are made very subjectively, a little bit arbitrarily, and there's a certain element of luck involved. So, maybe your portfolio and your work actually isn't good enough. That could be a real situation. I'm not saying that, you shouldn't improve your work, but sometimes it has nothing to do with that. Maybe, somebody else got a referral, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, and they got the job because of it. Or maybe, it just wasn't the right time to hire. Maybe they went through the interview process and realized, we need to hold off on this, and the timing wasn't right. There's just so many things that can go wrong in the hiring process, and there's so much subjectivity around it. If you just say one thing that isn't quite right in an interview, it can affect your chances. Brad actually mentioned that there is a high level of subjectivity in the hiring process, and people do the best they can, but the reality is that sometimes it is a little bit random. So here's what he said about it.
That's probably that is as much a problem as is a good thing, in the sense of what you tend to find is that people say in jest, kind of clients and stuff, they probably don't mean it in terms of bad intention, but they'll say, "Oh, I see myself in that person," or something like that, and they're almost looking for a clone of an employee that left 10 years ago or something like that, and they're not necessarily kind of thinking a bit wider, a bit more diverse in their thought.
The second thing is that really a portfolio is not enough. Now, I don't want to downplay the importance of a portfolio, okay? It is really important, but it is not the thing that will land you the job. It'll get you an interview, but it won't get you the job. So let me talk about what I mean by that. If we look at these Instagram posts here, this is on Render Weekly. Now, of course, these are renderings, and it's not showing a full process, which you need to do in your portfolio, but I'm just showing you an example. If you look at these, we have 5 amazingly rendered chairs. This particular brief was to do something for chairs for gaming for the Herman Miller sale chair. And essentially, these are all beautiful. But if you look at them, if we're being realistic here, are you able to easily pick a best one? I personally can't. I think that they're all very, very good. I think they're all excellent. These are beautifully rendered chairs, right? And this is what a hiring manager sees when they sort of narrow down to maybe 5 or 10 portfolios. They're just going to see a collection of amazing work. And it's really, really hard to differentiate between them. But then if you look at this particular concept by Andrew, I've linked his Instagram in the description if you want to check him out. This shows some really interesting divergent thinking. I think that this is definitely the best out of all of them, purely because it shows a unique perspective and it really stands out to me. This is maybe a little bit polarizing, right? It's not exactly fitting into what the brief was. It was supposed to be a gaming chair, and he essentially took the chair apart and turned it into a gaming controller. I get that. That will probably eliminate him from, some application processes. But there are other people who will really, really love this approach. So it shows that important sort of basic technical skill set baseline. He's performing at a very high level, but he's also exhibiting a unique way of thinking through this rendering. And Brad actually mentioned something similar to this, the ability to tell a compelling story. It goes beyond just the technical skills that are so incredibly important. Can you tell a story that is engaging and interesting and is just sort of cool? Is it something that's cool? Let's see what Brad says about it specifically.
And so the kind of the raw technical and, visual capability is like a forgiven. That's kind of like the standard. I once got told, the best portfolio you can look at online is the standard. That's not kind of exceptional. That's just kind of what your minimum standard level should look and feel like. But the differentiator is the attitude. Dare I say, an ability to, put a lovely render together. It's a great skill to have, but it's more than that. And that's the differentiator between someone that looks pretty good, but someone that is actually quite good at the job. And it's that thinking behind and how they can communicate that thinking, how you can communicate that idea you've got in the back of your mind to someone that has absolutely no idea what it is you've been doing on plugging away at for the last X amount of months or years. Someone that can just get it quite instantly. I think that's a great trait for a designer to have, someone that can write engaging copy.
Another thing that's really useful is just sort of being a 2-in-1 deal for these companies. So what I mean by that is maybe you do industrial design and engineering, or industrial design and digital UX, or industrial design and visual effects, or whatever it is. If you can sort of cross-pollinate 2 separate disciplines, that's really useful because it's essentially combining 2 jobs with 1, and they don't need to hire 2 people for that. It's very, very valuable to companies. That's another thing that you can do. It's really important to combine your passions into your work as well. Now, of course, you need to be able to show commercial success. We're not necessarily just artists, we're designers too, and we need to create value for the companies that we work for. But if you sort of inject a bit of your personality into your projects, I think it makes a really big difference. So let me tell you guys a story. I was basically on the verge of quitting industrial design in March of this year. I was totally over it. I had just gotten laid off from a company I was working at. You know, the entire department got laid off. I think like 80% of the company got laid off or something. And, you know, I was really disillusioned. I was upset by that. I had another interview lined up with a company, and even though we had signed paperwork and everything, they rescinded the offer. Basically, they changed the scope of what they were looking for, and they rescinded the written offer that I signed. So that was really upsetting, but that wasn't the end of it. On top of that, maybe a couple weeks later, I had another interview lined up. And as I was walking in the door to start the interview, like to get into the office, I got a text from the manager saying that the interview was canceled. And I was just like, oh my God, this, I am done with this profession. Like, I'm going to move to the woods and I'm going to become a carpenter. I hate this profession. I emailed one of my mentors about this, and he luckily encouraged me not to quit just yet. Just, you know, try something that makes you really excited about design, and just don't give up just yet. Give it a couple more months, because, you know, this was in the midst of the recession. This was like March of 2020. So I did that, and basically what happened was I was just working in this program called Houdini, and I was learning a bunch of visual effects stuff, and it was really cool, really exciting, fun stuff for me. And I also really love the ocean. As I've mentioned in other videos, I can actually see the ocean from here, kind of. So I really love the ocean, and I basically combined the stuff that I was doing in Houdini with a coral lighting collection that was 3D printed. Now, I did not expect this to go anywhere. I was just doing this for fun because I was unemployed, I wasn't doing anything, and I just was having a lot of fun in Houdini, making weird shit. So basically, I posted this on Behance, and it got a ton of likes, and it got a lot of attention. And sure enough, a couple months later, one of the biggest tech companies in the world contacted me, and a lot of the work that I was doing for this coral lighting collection was directly applicable to something that they were doing in their development pipeline. So you just don't know where this stuff is going to lead you. You just got to try stuff and have faith that it's going to work, okay? It's not clear how it's going to work out while you're doing it, but you just need to be persistent, you need to work hard, and you need to find something that makes you passionate about design in order to sort of persist through it. Here's another example. This channel is actually a great example. Now, I don't know if you guys have realized, but I started this channel in 2018 and basically nobody watched it. I think for basically 2 years, I had like, I don't know, less than 100 subscribers. I made like 8 or 10 videos and just nobody was watching them. And then over time, gradually, you know, it started to pick up very slowly and things were getting better. And then I think it was late April or May of 2020 when I posted a video called 6 Things Industrial Design Grads Need to Know. That's actually sort of related to a lot of the things I'm talking about here. I'll link that in the description. You can check it out. But basically, that sort of launched me from 100 subscribers to like 160 subscribers over the space of 1 or 2 days. And I said, maybe there's something to this. Maybe I just needed to, you know, adapt the content a little bit. And I did that. And now, you know, basically 10 months later, we've gone from 100 subscribers up to almost 7,000. And, you know, I think this points to a larger truth, okay? If you want to get a job in design, you need to help the community. All right, and this relates to networking and referrals, which I'm actually going to get into right now. You need to make sure that you're helping the community in any way that you are able to. Oh, by the way, if you are not subscribed, you should totally subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the channel grow, it motivates me to continue making new content, so please subscribe if you're not subscribed. I'd appreciate it. If you don't want to subscribe, whatever, that's fine too. So networking and referrals. Pretty much every big client that I've gotten has been through a referral or some sort of networking. It's really, really hard to come in as a complete stranger and get a job. It can be done, but it's much, much easier if you have a referral. Now, the main key thing here is to basically have a big network. And this is sort of a dirty word to a lot of people because they think, oh, well, it feels kind of sleazy and salesy and weird, but don't think of networking like that. Think of networking as a way to create genuine connections with people, okay? This is very important. It needs to be real and genuine. Otherwise, it is salesy and sleazy, if we're being honest here. And one of the best ways to build a big network is to offer value to people. Help them out. Help your community. Very, very important. I can't stress it enough. And maybe you're thinking like, John, you've been in the field for 10 years. Of course, you have a lot of knowledge to offer. But that's true, but even a student has a lot to offer. If you think about it, a lot of the people at the pinnacle of their field have no one who wants to listen to them, even though they're experts. And one thing that you can do for a professional is to simply just listen to them. If you listen intently and show a genuine curiosity for what they do, they will appreciate that and respect it, and it goes a really long way. That alone could be enough to land you a job, and it might not happen in 2 weeks, it might not happen in a month, it might not happen even in 6 months. But eventually, if you build a large enough network and you listen to these hiring managers who are in a position to get you a job, and you show a genuine interest in what they do, they will feel much more inclined to hire you than some complete stranger. So maybe you don't have a network. Maybe you don't know any hiring managers or, directors of design, creative directors, people who can hire you basically. Here's what I would recommend. Post a lot of good work on LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever, okay? That's gonna be important. Get it in front of the right people. Don't be afraid to tag hiring managers if it's work that you're proud of and you think that they would be interested in checking out, okay? Totally valid way to get work. Another thing you can do is just cold message them on LinkedIn. Message them and basically say, I have a genuine interest in what you do. Be specific about what you like about their work and just say, hey, I really appreciate what you do. I'd love to connect and speak with you on the phone or over a Zoom call for 15 minutes. It would mean a lot to me. I'm trying to break into the field and I'd really appreciate it. Now, a lot of people aren't going to respond. That's the reality of this. It's going to be a low response rate. But even if the response rate is only 10 or 20%, let's say you reach out to 50 hiring managers and 20% respond. That's 10 informational interviews, 10 contacts that you now have that you did not have before. And now they're going to be closely following your work. You can update them every couple months. Don't spam them or be annoying, but every few months, show them some of your work and ask them for feedback, ask them for advice on what they would do in your position, and they'll feel valued. Don't ask them for a job, okay? Don't go in too early and just ask them for a job. You need to forge a genuine relationship with someone before you ask them for anything. Be sure to offer them value first. So here's a really interesting test that Brad has his clients do when they're interviewing a designer. And I think it's very relevant. It shows that, you don't really have an ulterior motive and you're just a genuinely curious person, which I think is so important for being a designer.
Being able just to communicate to someone that isn't a designer, I think is quite an important skill to have. We have clients, for example, that they may, back when everyone used to go into an office, they would send the receptionist in to go and talk to the designer, and they'll ask them to do some whiteboard ideas or whatever, and then conveniently they would say, oh, I've got a call, and the receptionist would come in and ask, do you want a drink or something? And they would ask to explain their ideas, and that is actually part of the interview process, is to explain your idea to a non-designer and see how they react, to see if they have empathy or all these traits. These are important, but they're doing it not necessarily, you're unaware that you're still being interviewed, but you are. So there are tricks of the trade to make sure you can just tap into that kind of character of the person to make sure they're right for the company, that they're happy just to spend half an hour chatting to the receptionist, and there's no ego or bravado about they're happy to kind of engage in that kind of conversation. So yeah, having no ego as well, I think, is quite important.
Another thing I want to mention is the importance of humility, and it relates to this sort of receptionist test that we're talking about here. Basically, it's really important to be humble because, number one, obviously nobody wants to work with an arrogant jerk. That's kind of a given. But number two, and I didn't believe this, but a lot of people will view you as a threat. If you're overly competent and overly confident in your approach and your delivery, especially if you're a much younger designer, hiring managers will actually see you as a threat to their job. They need to feel like they're invested in your success, and they need to feel like they're actually helping you by hiring you on some level. And I couldn't believe that this was ever the case when I was a young designer, because one of my mentors told me this, and I was like, there's no way any creative director at some big company is going to see me as a threat to their job. But I've been about 10 years in my career, and I've seen this enough times to know that it is the truth. So it's unfortunate. I'm not saying all hiring managers are like this at all. I'm not saying that. But there are a certain subset of hiring managers who are like this. They need to feel like they were a part of your success, like they're helping you, okay? And humility is gonna be really important. And it sort of relates to the receptionist thing we were talking about. Just being humble is generally a good trait, especially when you're looking for a job. Now, if all else fails, you think you have a really good portfolio, maybe you don't actually, or maybe the job market really sucks, who knows? Maybe you can't find a job. I mean, it happened to me when I first graduated. It took me about 3 months to find my first job, and it wasn't like some big prestigious company. It was just some small startup, and I was doing industrial design work for them. And, I was kind of bummed out because I wanted to work at like one of the cool consultancies, and I was really upset about it. So what I did was I just started my own company with a couple friends. I mean, you're a designer, you can make things. I don't think you understand how valuable that is. You take it for granted because you're used to seeing it. You think that anybody can just create something out of nothing, but that is an incredible skill to have. You can start your own business, and that's what I did. I started a company called Protos Eyewear with a couple of friends right out of school. When I first graduated, I didn't know anything about like networking or referrals or anything like that. Like I'm mentioning in this video, I didn't know any of this stuff, and my portfolio was solid, but it wasn't amazing. So I really never even got an interview at any of these companies. And I was really upset about it because I just didn't understand like what I needed to do. So what I did was I just started my own company with a couple of friends. It was called Protos Eyewear, and it was really, really successful, both in terms of actually selling a lot of eyewear frames, glasses, and getting a lot of press. So by the time I was 24 years old, I was written about in Forbes.com, VentureBeat, Fast Company, Core 77, Design Boom, and it was all because I started this company with a couple of friends. And I was talking with some of the biggest eyewear distributors in the world as like a 24-year-old, which is absolutely crazy to think about now. I was speaking with the COO of one of the biggest companies in the world, which is just crazy to me. And if I hadn't started that company with a couple of friends, then it wouldn't have gone anywhere. Now, you don't know where any of this stuff is gonna lead, so you just need to keep creating, keep building. If nobody believes in you, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're unemployable or you're not good at your job. It could be that. Maybe your portfolio does need to improve. If you want, you can check out the Discord. The link is in the description below if you want to check it out. I have a chat, and you can talk to me, and I'll look at your portfolio, and I'll tell you honestly if I think it needs work or not. Every one of us can improve our portfolios, but I'll tell you honestly if it's going to get you a job or not, if you're interested in hearing that. At least, that's my opinion of it. So my point in talking about all this stuff isn't to talk about how great I am. Like, nobody cares about that stuff. The point is to show you that this stuff can be done. If nobody believes in you, it could be the case that your portfolio sucks and maybe you need to improve it. Not a big deal. But it could also just be the case that you don't quite understand networking and referrals, and maybe you need to reach out to people on LinkedIn. But really, this stuff is here to inspire you to take action, to do something. If nobody wants to hire you, start your own company, see where it goes. Maybe it won't go anywhere. Like I said, it took 2 years for anybody to ever notice this channel. And, that's really the main thing here. You just gotta be persistent, you gotta push through, and eventually something's gonna work out. I guess the biggest takeaway from this little section of the video is that no one can take your skills away from you. No one determines whether you are good enough as a designer or not. You decide when you're done designing. You decide whether or not you're going to, pursue another field or something. Nobody else decides that. It's up to you. You're in control of your destiny. And, there is a lot of luck and randomness involved. I'm not saying that there isn't. But ultimately, if you're persistent, something's going to pay off. It'll just take some time. You need to be patient. Like I said, I started this channel. Nobody was watching it for 2 years. And then all of a sudden it goes from 100 subscribers up to 7,000. That's insane. So that's really the main point here. All right, guys. Well, I hope you found this video helpful. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below if you have input on this video, if you think it's great, if you think it sucks. I'd love to hear your perspective. And thanks again for checking it out. I really, really appreciate it.